Life is full of unexpected twists, where the ones we love can surprise us in ways we never saw coming. In today's story, we follow a woman who gave everything to raise her adopted daughter, only to be betrayed when everything she worked for was on the line. Betrayal, greed, and love all collide in this tale of heartbreak and personal growth. What happens when everything you've built comes crashing down, and the people you trust most turn their back on you? Subscribe to our channel to start today's story with life stories. The morning had begun like any other, or so I thought. As I sipped my coffee, I gazed out the window, watching the light dance through the leaves of the old oak tree in the garden. But life has a way of catching us off guard, and today, it would strike with a force I hadn't anticipated. It all started with Sarah, my adopted daughter, the young girl who once had no home, no family, and no hope, had become a crucial part of my life over the past 3 years. I remember the first time I met her, a scared, fragile soul, burdened with the weight of abandonment. She had been through 3 foster homes by the time I found her, each one leaving scars that went deeper than the eye could see. She told me once that all she wanted was a place to sleep in peace. In that moment, I knew I couldn't turn my back on her. So, I took her in, filed the necessary paperwork, went through the state's assessments, and welcomed her into my home. We slowly started to build a relationship, a slow, gradual process, much like planting a seed and watching it grow. There were days when she was still distant, still unsure, but there were other days when she called me, Mom, for the first time after a family dinner. It felt like my heart had finally found its rhythm again. But as with all things in life, change is inevitable. The company I worked for had gone through a legal dispute. The assets I had worked tirelessly to accumulate were frozen, and everything I had spent years building came to a standstill. For most people, this would be a temporary setback, a situation that could be fixed. But for Sarah, it was the perfect opportunity to reveal her true nature. She walked into the living room one evening, a gleam in her eye, excitement radiating off her. Mom, I know what I want for New Year's, she said, holding up her phone. The screen displayed an advertisement for a luxurious villa, one of the newest, most extravagant properties by Cypress Creek. This one, it's perfect. You can get it for me, right? It's my gift. I stared at the screen, feeling an uncomfortable knot form in my chest. Sarah had always been calculating, but she was still young. I hoped, naively, perhaps, that she would grow out of it. I'd always treated her like my own, giving her everything I could afford, never once thinking she would ask for something so extravagant. You already live here, Sarah, I said calmly, setting my coffee down on the table. Why do you need another house? Her expression faltered for a moment, but it was fleeting. Mom, you work so hard all day, and I know you're always tired. This house is great, but I want something for myself. Something that reflects how hard I work. My friends and I want to throw parties, and I don't want to bother you. It would be better for both of us if I had my own place. The words hung in the air, and I felt a sharp, uncomfortable pang in my heart. I wasn't angry, not yet, but something inside me shifted. I had given her everything, clothes, a home, a future. I had been there for every milestone, every tear, every joy, and yet, now, she was asking for more. More than I could give, and more than she needed. I took a slow breath, trying to remain calm. This house has 3 floors. Sarah, the soundproofing is excellent. If you want to have fun, go upstairs. You won't bother me. Her face darkened, a flicker of irritation flashing in her eyes. Mom, do you have to be so stingy? It's just $2 million. That's like a few months' income for you. Why is it such a big deal? I stared at her, my heart sinking deeper. I had worked so hard to build everything I had. And yet here she was, treating money like it was something that could be easily conjured out of thin air. But there was more beneath the surface, something cold and calculating. I'd seen it before, but I had always ignored it. Now, I could no longer pretend. I was silent for a long moment, my eyes studying her face. If the villa means that much to you. Sarah, I said finally, my voice steady but firm. Did you give it away? Her eyes widened, and I saw the hesitation flash across her face. After a long pause, she muttered, yes, I gave it to my father. The words hit me like a slap. I had suspected it all along. But hearing her admit it was a bitter pill to swallow. She had crossed a line. And I could no longer ignore it. Didn't I tell you not to handle any of my assets without permission? I said quietly, my voice colder now. Her face flushed with a mix of anger and guilt. But she quickly masked it with an argument. A feigned sense of righteousness. She claimed she was just trying to help her biological father, who she said had never had anything nice. She argued that the villa and the car were her way of showing him some kindness. But I saw through it. It wasn't about helping anyone. It was about Sarah, and only Sarah. In that moment, I realized something profound. This wasn't about love. It was about convenience. For 3 years, I had given her everything I could. Everything a mother would give. But now, I saw her for who she really was. The warmth I had once felt for her was replaced by a cold, unfeeling realization. She wasn't my daughter anymore. She was just another person trying to take what she could from me. And now, the truth was laid bare. It was hard to know what to say in that moment. But I knew that something had to change. Sarah's face, flushed with a mixture of guilt and anger, still lingered in my mind. The way she had justified everything. The entitlement that had seeped through her words. It was all too much. I had to be firm. I had to stop pretending that things would somehow get better on their own. You're right, I said, breaking the silence. You gave away the villa. You gave away the Bentley. You've done exactly what you wanted without asking for my permission. I never imagined I'd be treated this way by someone I raised as my own. She stared at me, her lips trembling, her eyes filled with frustration. But I could see the underlying fear too. Fear of losing everything. That was the moment I knew this was no longer about a misunderstanding or a brief moment of irresponsibility. This was who she had become. Mom, you don't understand, Sarah began, her voice rising, her tears now threatening to spill. You've always had everything. You never had to work as hard as I have. My father, my real father, he doesn't have anything. Why can't you just help him? You're rich. You can afford it. I took a deep breath. My mind still clear. Do you even understand what you're saying? I asked quietly. You want me to give up everything I've worked for to support someone who has stolen from me? Someone who would have gone to jail if I hadn't stepped in. Do you know what your father did? Her expression flickered with confusion and a hint of anger. He made a mistake, okay? A big one. But that doesn't mean he should suffer for the rest of his life. You have so much. Why can't you share it? Just a little more for us. Her words cut through me like a knife. But instead of feeling hurt, I felt something else, something colder. She didn't see me. She didn't see the sacrifices I made. She saw a bank account, a credit card, a car, and a house. I had been nothing more than a source of wealth to her. And I had allowed it. I had let it go on for too long. I stood up, not bothering to hide my frustration anymore. I walked toward the door. My footsteps steady, my resolve firm. If you can't respect me, Sarah, if you think that money is all that matters, then you don't deserve anything from me. I've done enough. I've given you everything you could ever need. And this is how you repay me? She took a step forward, reaching for me, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. The door clicked shut behind me, and I felt the weight of my decision settle deep within me. I was done. I didn't know how to explain it, but I had to let go. It wasn't just her betrayal, it was everything she had become. Someone who would walk away from family, from love, for the sake of money. Someone who would see their mother not as a person, but as an ATM. That night, I sat on the porch, looking up at the stars. It was peaceful here, even with everything swirling inside me. The world outside had continued to turn, and I realized I could still find my way forward. I didn't need Sarah. I didn't need anyone who only saw me for what I could give. In the days that followed, I focused on my work. The company was slowly recovering from the legal turmoil. The assets were still frozen. But I knew it wouldn't be long before everything would be back on track. But I also knew that it wasn't just the company that needed to recover. It was me. Sarah had made her choice. And now I had to make mine. There was no going back. I would continue to give my all to the company, to my employees, and to the life I had built. But the person I had once called my daughter was no longer part of that life. She had left, long before I had closed the door on her. And as I stood at the edge of a new chapter, I realized that sometimes, letting go was the only way forward. A week passed, and the numbness from Sarah's betrayal began to dull, replaced by a strange clarity. The hurt I had felt slowly gave way to something more empowering, freedom. The house felt quieter now. But there was no longer an overwhelming sense of loss. I was alone, yes, but I had always been strong enough to face whatever life had thrown at me. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up before, and I could do it again. One morning, as I was sipping my tea on the porch, I heard the familiar hum of a car pulling into the driveway. It was early, and the sound caught me off guard. I had been expecting a delivery from the company, but nothing could have prepared me for the sight that greeted me. A brand new red Ferrari rolled into the driveway, its polished body gleaming in the morning light. My heart skipped a beat. But it wasn't from excitement or anticipation. No, it was something deeper, something that reminded me of who I had become, of the resilience I had cultivated. The assistant stepped out of the car, dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, his movements precise and confident. "Miss Dawson," he greeted me warmly, holding the door open as I stepped outside. "This is the vehicle you ordered 2 days ago." I stood there for a moment, the weight of the moment sinking in. For so long, I had felt burdened by expectations, my own, and others. I had allowed myself to be weighed down by the notion that I needed to keep giving, keep sacrificing for those who didn't deserve it. But now, I stood taller, my back straighter. The assistant continued, oblivious to the emotions swirling inside me. "Also, the company operations have fully resumed after the temporary levy. All departments are back on track, and things are moving forward." I nodded slowly, my mind already shifting gears. This moment was a testament to my strength, to my ability to rise from the ashes. My business was recovering, and with it, my sense of self. I wasn't the woman who had been dragged down by betrayal and loss anymore. I was a force in my own right, capable of standing tall despite everything that had happened. But as the assistant spoke, something nagged at me, a feeling, a thought, something that I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about the car. It wasn't just about the company's recovery. It was about Sarah. I thought of her, the girl who had once clung to me with desperation. The girl who had trusted me with her heart. I remembered the times she had sat with me, shared meals with me, laughed with me. There had been real moments of connection, of tenderness. But those moments had been built on a fragile foundation, one that was cracked the moment she valued money over family. And now, standing there, with everything in place, my wealth, my business, my strength, I realized something. I had never truly needed Sarah to feel whole. I had loved her, yes, but I wasn't defined by her love or her presence. I had the power to rebuild, to reshape my life. A few hours later, as I walked through the company's front doors, the receptionist greeted me with a bright smile, her voice almost trembling with excitement. The employees who saw me nodded respectfully, some even wiping tears from their eyes. There was a sense of admiration in their gaze, a silent recognition of everything I had been through. I had weathered the storm and come out on the other side, stronger than before. I felt it now, the respect, the warmth. It was no longer just about the company's success. It was about who I had become in the process. As I settled back into my office, going through the plans for the upcoming projects and meetings, I knew one thing for sure. The world didn't stop for heartbreak, but it did offer second chances. I was ready for whatever came next. And this time, I would face it on my own terms. As the days passed, I continued to rebuild not just my company, But my life, I found a new rhythm. A balance between work and personal growth. My days no longer felt heavy with regret or the need to prove myself to anyone. I had learned that true strength didn't come from accumulating wealth or possessions. It came from knowing who I was, independent of anyone else's expectations. Sarah, once my daughter, had made her choices. She had let money dictate her worth. And in doing so, she lost the very thing that mattered, love. I had given her everything. But it was never enough for her. I realized that, in the end, people like Sarah didn't need my help. They needed to learn the value of humility and self-worth. Lessons I couldn't teach her anymore. I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her back in my life. The woman I had become had no room for regret. Instead, I chose to embrace the freedom that came with letting go. I had to acknowledge that not everyone would be a part of my journey. And that was okay. I had enough within myself to move forward. For the first time in a long while, I truly felt at peace. The struggles I had faced had shaped me. But they no longer defined me. I was more than the mistakes of others. I was stronger, more self-sufficient, and ready for whatever came next. As the sun set on another day, I couldn't help but smile. Life was a constant flow of beginnings and endings. But as long as I stayed true to myself, I knew I would always find my way. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to follow more life stories.